Good evening, everyone. We are going to start the meeting. It's 7 o'clock. Thank you for joining us on our Scrutiny Panel 1 meeting covering housing and environment. We have some colleagues online joining us. This meeting is being streamed live. So if you could please, for those that are online, if you could mute yourself and use the raise hand if you want to ask a question. Apologies for absence. I've not received any apologies, but Councillor Alexandra is online, and I believe Councillor Summers and Sidhu will join online too, and Councillor Tyke is running late. Urgent matters to consider. I've not been notified of any declaration of interest. None. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just declare the same interest, having worked for another local authority housing department.
Thank you. Matters to be considered in private. I've not been notified of any. Minutes of the last meeting, which was held on the 19th of September. Are those agreed? Agreed. Right, we move on to the agenda item 6, and that is going to be presented by Carlos Nair and Malcolm Densley. Just before you start, we did visit Hope for Southall Street Homeless, and I believe that was on the 5th of November with Councillor Martin and Councillor Zizamos. The work that they do, it's really important, and it's amazing to see that, you know, the support that we have there and the support that they give, bringing in all the services together to help those vulnerable individuals. Councillor Martin, I think you wanted to say some, because you've worked with them as well. So
yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it was very clear on the visit that they are a valuable commodity to not just Southall as a town, but I think just generally across the whole of Ealing. Their work is incredible. I have to say, they've got an amazing dedicated team with that regular drop-in. The unfortunate thing, I suppose, from their perspective, is that they only have 1 day a week. And I do think it is something that we probably need to consider as a panel as to what we can do to expand that offering. It's quite clear, certainly from Southall, as one of the towns that they look after, that there is a clear need for a dedicated workspace for, I think, potentially 7 days a week. It is that severe. 1 day is just not going to work, and it's only 3 hours of that 1 day, unfortunately. So it is something I think seriously we do need to look at. The services that they provide and the people that they work with, I just can't emphasize just how good they are. It was incredible to see, and one of the things I do as a councillor is we were talking earlier about how I do a sweep, particularly around one of the estates that we've got in my ward, and it was incredible to see probably 3/4 of the people that we move on from that estate in that venue. And I think they got a bit worried when I arrived that we were going to move them on from there. The fact that they do a lot of work for the no recourse to public funds, I think, is also a valuable commodity. And it is something that I haven't seen across any one of our other towns. So I do think that's something, again, that we need to look at seriously. And I think as a local authority, I think it is really, really important that we are there supporting this charity. And whatever we can do to assist them, I think would be an assistance, not just to them, but I think also to the individuals that they look after. And I think sort of finally, just the people that are involved, the people that give up, the volunteers that are there, do an amazing job, whether it be serving a cup of hot tea to the one meal that these people may be eating, in the one hot meal that they could be eating during the course of the week, is just incredible. And I think we should really be basically patting them on the back for doing what they do. But I do think we need to look very, very carefully at what support we can give Hope for Southall. So thank you.
Absolutely, I agree with you. You know, when we were there, we saw that they had RISE, they had lawyers, they had somebody from the NHS, from St. Mungo's, all different services where they're helping these individuals, and basically it was a triaging them to different services, and at the end of the day, they all come together to help these individuals and possibly get their status or just get them off the streets. Councillor Zidamos, I know you did a night shift with St. Mungo's. Do you want to tell us about that?
So I went the day before we went to that. I went to the midnight shift with St. Mungo's outreach workers and the park gate security guards, because they go with them at night. And so they get a calling card of people have ridden into the street link and have spotted people, and they go out to outreach to them. Our first call was in Perivale, somewhere in the middle of the field. It was complete darkness. We couldn't see a thing. We had our torches from our phones. We could not find a tent. We couldn't find anything. We spent 15-20 minutes walking around in the mud, and in the end we just couldn't find anybody. They called out for him, and I imagine that if they wanted to be found, they could have been found, I guess, but I guess they didn't. So we left there, and we went South Ealing Station. The person's stuff was there, but there was no person, which apparently happens all the time. So even if they know someone and they want to outreach to them, they go to their normal spot, but they're not there, which is a problem. And then we went into Walpole Park after hours. They let us in, they unlocked the gates, and we drove in, and there were teens having a party, which they got moved on by the security. And there was one guy who rough sleeping on a bench from Georgia, no recourse to public funds, outstayed his visa. They knew about him but had lost touch with him, so they reconnected with him. His mobile phone, they had a different number for him. They sort of worked it out, and they said to him, come to the outreach centre, we'll help you, blah, blah, blah. And strange enough, I did actually see him there the next day, so it does work. So that was really cool. That he actually went. So I was surprised about that. And then there was actually coincidentally 3 call outs to my patch in Hanger Hill. 2 of them were tents on a football field. They were empty, have been empty for ages. The clothes inside were mouldy. So I reported them the next day, so they get changed and moved. There was one at the bottom of my street who had built a whole structure, but he wasn't there. And I've reported him a few times, and they've never seen him, so they think it's completely abandoned. Again, no one there. So that I'm having that removed. And then at the top of my street, at the other end of the street, there were 2 EU citizens who had no settled status, even though they probably could have, but they had not done the paperwork, blah, blah, blah. So at the moment, they're in no recourse for public funding because they're not settled. And one of the things we discovered on the next day was if they could sort out people's status, they could get funding, and some of them would get moved off. And that's the most important thing, is working out the immigration status. Because those 2 guys that are sleeping at the top of my street, they probably would not be there if they had proper status, and they would probably qualify as well, but they weren't there. I mean, and I said to the outreach workers, I'm at this meeting, what should I say? What do you want? And they said, because St. Mungo's does not have a a drop-in centre. So again, they asked for space because they can't take people to their offices. So they really, really, really want a space. So that was a really big thing. And the other thing that I found out, which I had not realised before, was part of the attraction of Southall is drugs, because they're the cheapest drugs in the UK, and I did not know that. So that was sort of a wake up call, because they said that a lot of the English rough sleepers in Southall are all there for the drugs. So that was my take.
Thank you very much. So we move on to the report, and that is on supporting people with no recourse to public funds. Carlos, if you want to take away.
No. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about the support we offer for rough sleepers with no recourse to public funds. I guess as a little bit, I'm assuming you've all read the report, and we all seem to be in the same wavelength about having a space and how important that would be some kind of one-stop shop day center. But I'll come to that at the end of it. So historically, we're borrowed with a high number of rough sleepers. Last year, we came third in London, only after Westminster and Camden in the yearly count. That's going to happen next week. Sorry, I've lost the chain of thought. But differently to Westminster and Camden, we have a rough sleeping population that is in a very high proportion made up of people with no recourse to public funds, mainly Asian people, mainly from India, that have come here, have overstayed their visas or whatever it is, and then a big group as well, but not as big, of European nationals that have not regularized their situation or came later on, and they were not able to get status. If you need any statistics on that, we can. I mean, apart from the statistics that are in the report already, we can work that out. We've got lots of stats on rough sleeping. Okay. So what do? We commission an outreach team. We also commission a number of other teams that work generally with rough sleepers. But the most important focus of support for no recourse is the immigration advice, at least from our side. We can also signpost people to drug and alcohol services, to mental health services, NHS, give them access to health services. But what comes from us, from our commission services, is the support to obtain legal status in the UK. We support. I think we have a street legal worker, and we have access to a West London immigration advice service. The reason we have a street legal worker is, well, first of all, because we have a grant to have it, but we asked for this grant when we moved on, after we moved on from a model when we used to have to hold a contract for the immigration advice, the legal advice with North Kensington Law Centre, to a model where that contract is held now by the West London group. But the needs in that area of Ealing, probably compared to the rest of the, probably bigger than the rest of the West London local authorities together. So we asked for extra capacity, and we got extra capacity to work on that. They support a big number of cases. They have 90 cases at the moment in their caseload. But we also have a big group of around 30-40 people who have no case, have already been referred to immigration advice, and they have been assessed by solicitors, and the conclusion was, you don't have a case at the moment. most of these people have overstayed their visas, and they have to be in the country 20 years to be able to get status. One of the difficulties is, you haven't been here 20 years, but even for people that haven't been here 20 years, they are rough sleeping. So how are you going to get together the evidence to show that you have been in the country for 20 years? If you're rough sleeping, you don't know, you have what you carry in your bag. If the solicitor needs to go to the Home Office with paperwork, you're going to say, well, how are we going to find that paperwork? We can support them in some ways. For example, we use Chain as a database, a pan-London rough sleeping database, and that the evidence from Chain is acceptable as evidence that people have been residing in the UK. But that's not always available because of the nature of rough sleeping. You're rough sleeping here, you're rough sleeping there. Sometimes you disappear from records. Sometimes you come back. Anyway, it's a very difficult area of support. It's because of the nature of rough sleeping and immigration. We work very close with Hope for Southall. We have supported them to get funding to accommodate people who are willing to return to their country of origin. I think I mentioned 40 individuals that have returned to India using their service. The figure has now gone to up to 50 as the latest figure. So in 2 years, they have supported 50 individuals to go back to India. I mean, this is an amazing achievement compared to what we could do in the past. We would have, I don't know, 4 or 5 individuals in a year going back to their countries of origin, with Hope for Southall and our outreach service working with them. And the whole difference is for them to have funds to accommodate these individuals while they work with them. They've been very, very successful with their model. Well, I mentioned here legal implications. We as a local authority, we cannot use public funds to accommodate people with no recourse to public funds. That's another difficulty in the process of supporting these people, because even if you have an immigration lawyer, an immigration solicitor that is going to support you, if you are living in the streets and you cannot be found from one day to the next, or you're not sure you're going to have the same phone tomorrow because someone may steal it from you, your solicitor is not going to be able to talk to you every time they need you, and you're not going to be able to hold any paperwork with you. So not being able to accommodate people or to use public funds to accommodate people, it's basically a great difficulty for us providing support to them. I mean, there are some exceptions. There is exceptions as in if there is risk to life, and there are some exceptions under adult social care legislation. But from the housing point of view, we cannot do that. A local charity like Hope for Southall could accommodate people, can accommodate people. They actually do. We would be limited in what we can do, as in giving them money, because that money would still be public funds. I don't know how the council. I don't know a way where the council could find the money that was not public funds to be given to them. But ideally, that would be one way to help them continue with their work. Historically they used to provide a night shelter, and they moved on from that model. And the main reason why they moved on from that model was that they were accommodating a group of rough sleepers in Southall year after year in their night shelter. So when they closed the shelter in whatever, March, April, and then October, November of the next year, they were accommodating exactly the same group of people year after year. There was no moving on, and they felt that they were perpetuating the situation of these individuals. Of course, the funding they were using for the winter night shelter was donations and was not public funds. And that's the main reason why they moved on from that model to the model where they are accommodating people to return to their country, because at least this way they are seeing outcomes. They are not just giving people a place to sleep year after year. Anyway, we are also providing some accommodation for large sleepers with no recourse to public funds. My report mentions 3 beds. At the moment, we have 9 beds. We have secured some winter funds, and we're offering extra 6 beds during the winter. Those beds are targeted to vulnerable rough sleepers with no recourse to public funds who otherwise would come to harm. So that I guess the health element comes into play, and is a bit of a grayer area, not as clear as you don't have any health issues, we cannot accommodate you because it's public funds. The funds for the 6 extra beds will run out at the end of March, so we will be back to 3 beds. These 9 beds are being funded through the GLA and London councils. It's not funds that we control, and they will more likely end at the end of the financial year. We have now secured the use of the old library in Southall to use only during SWEP activation. So SWEP is the severe weather emergency protocol. We can accommodate anyone and everyone under when the protocol is active. And it's actually open tonight. It's been open since Tuesday night, and we are using it mainly for the no recourse cohort. The library the library being used as a rest center is a fantastic example of how we could use that particular space. We have invited all partners to be involved with the delivery of SWEP. So what we have in the library for only for a few days now replicates very much what we have on a Tuesday afternoon in St Anselm's, which is Hope for Southall, drug and alcohol, NHS, mental health, everyone together in one place providing support at the same time, and basically being able to refer cases to one another there and then. So what can we do? I mean, you've all mentioned the need for that space. I think we have a building, but it's empty. I mean, it has been empty for years now. That most partners have identified as an ideal location to deliver these one-stop shop, as in St Anselm's. It would be lawful for us to provide support in a council-owned building. We're not providing accommodation, but we are providing a form of support, and we are making it easier for everyone else to deliver their support as well, from the NHS to local charities. So that's my main recommendation. We have other needs, but I think they are not so focused on no recourse, which is what we're talking about today.
Thank you very, very much for the report. We go on to questions. So I have a few questions myself, but then if you just let me know, then yeah. So in the report, I know it's mentioned about the homeless funding streams that are set to, well, in the report it says that it might not continue, but I believe they are set to expire in April 25. Do we have any provisions for, once those fundings expire, what are we going to do? And then that's my question. And Ben, if you want to go next.
So, do we have any provisions? No. That's the short answer. The real answer is most likely yes. The government, I mean, I think when I wrote the report, it wasn't clear what was coming out of the budget, although the budget had already been published. MHCLG needed time to look at the budget and see what was in there for us. The current figure that they are telling us is going to be used for RSI, for the Rough Sleeping Initiative, for 25-26. Probably doesn't match the oldest figures, so we are unlikely to receive. So what's likely to happen is that the current RSI 5 will be extended for a year, but with a smaller amount. So we are unlikely to receive the full grant for the next year.
Do we also get the NSTF and the other fundings as well, or is that the main one that we get? That's the night shelter transformation fund.
Oh, then so we don't apply for night shelter transformation fund. It's local charities who have to do that. And yeah, I'm aware we've supported Hope for Southall to do that. Yes.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks so much. That was really clear summary of what's going on, and thank you for what you're doing. Clearly, really important work as well. I've got a couple of questions. First one, quite technical, is about the 9 beds that you said you've got available. Obviously, that's separate to the severe weather provision that you have, so you can get everyone in when you need to. The 9 beds there for particular vulnerabilities, you said. Could you just give us an idea of what kind of situation someone would be in to be able to access those? And is 9 enough beds for you to be able to work with?
Is 9 enough beds? So we targeting those beds for people who have a case for immigration. So they who are going to be able in the short term to get legal status in the UK, and also who would come to harm if they were in the streets. As wide as that definition is, that's mainly what we look at who's more vulnerable, and then we prioritize those cases. I guess it's a mix of who's more vulnerable and who's got a better chance to get immigration status in the short term. Because once that person gets immigration status, we can move them on to other accommodation and move someone else into that room. So yeah, we try to be as strategic as we can, and we try to not only focus on vulnerability, although that focus has to be there because otherwise we couldn't be using those rooms lawfully. We also try to focus on moving people on after that as soon as possible.
Just to follow up on that about the vulnerability, being more vulnerable, what kind of thing would make someone more vulnerable?
So physical illness, mental health, disabilities, that kind of thing. Is that what you're thinking?
Thank you so much. Second question, this is a broad one. So obviously we've got a disproportionate number of people rough sleeping in Ealing compared to other places that have no recourse to public funds. Do you have any sense of why that is that we have a larger number of people who don't have recourse?
Southall is a big focus of attraction. I mean, the drug market has been mentioned here, but although that is true, very often rough sleepers come to Southall that don't have a drug problem when they arrive, and they do have a drug problem after a while of being. We have now lots of people coming out of the home office hotels, for example, young men just arrived in the UK or arrived in the UK a few months ago who get a positive decision, go to sleep rough in Southall. Today we're seeing them and they have no drug or mental health problem at all. 2 weeks down the line, they have a drug problem because of the dynamics amongst rough sleepers and the drug dealers who will go and push drugs on them and may present them that as a way to, oh, you're going to make some money selling drugs for us, but the way I'm going to pay you is giving you drugs. I've also been told that there is a likelihood that Ealing is very attractive because we have a lot of services. We have Gujwaras, we have other services that we have Acton Homeless Concern. We have services that we are very well prepared for a rough sleeping population compared to our neighbours, and that may be a magnet for attracting people. But mainly the no recourse. There is a cultural connection to Southall. Many people come to the UK, and the only reference they have of London and the UK is Southall, is the Gujwara. We have many examples of that, but yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Summers?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for your work. It sounds like great work you're doing. My questions, they don't mean to sound like this, but they might sound like they're lacking in compassion. But I just what you just said there about we're making ourselves a magnet to attract these people, and that is horrifying. The idea that people are granted right to remain and then become drug addicts. I mean, that's terrible. And in the report it says 71% of people are foreign nationals who are no recourse, etc. What is the do we know from our outreach work how many of these people actually would like to be repatriated to their home countries if that's possible? I'm presuming there's financial problems with that. And also, what sort of work, what is the situation with immigration, the border force or whatever, if they come and sort of do checks, and are we sort of providing sanctuary for these people, or do we have to inform the authorities if we find somebody who shouldn't be in the country? I'm just curious to know, because obviously while we're doing this is great work to protect people who are very, very vulnerable, it would be much better off if they are housed, and if that means going back to their home country or whatever, we should help that.
Thank you. Carlos, if you just want to take another question and then answer them together, please, if that's okay.
Great. Thank you, Chair, and my apologies for being a few minutes late. And thank you so much for the presentation and all the work you're doing. And we all know the scale of the challenge it is, and amazing that you're out there on the front line doing absolutely everything you can. I was wondering, as we listened, if there are any examples that you see maybe in other boroughs of things that are working, maybe good models or good approaches or things you've heard, and not even just across London, but maybe across the country or elsewhere. Just what kind of solutions you're seeing out there, if there's something we should be looking at. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, I'll try to answer both. We do not work with the Home Office to do any enforced repatriations. We work with the Home Office with regarding voluntary repatriations, but many people, the Home Office wouldn't even be able to send them back to their countries, because one of the first things they'll do is destroy their passports. So if you have a person that doesn't have a passport, there's no country where you can repatriate them to, because they don't have documents for you to even confirm their nationality. And also because of the impact that would have on outreach services. If we were enforcing repatriations, people would refuse to work with our services, because they would be worried that they are going to be reported to the Home Office and repatriated. Good examples of practice elsewhere. We do not compare. That's the main problem. There is Redbridge and Slough nearby that have similar figures, but not even close. We have. I talk regularly to my counterpart in Redbridge. I have never spoken to my counterpart in Slough, but that's something that I may need to take up. Whenever we have meetings with a Home Office, with MHCLG, because they worry about the numbers of no recourse, and we go through them through the best practice. Ealing is doing everything that is in their books, that is recommended. what else could we do apart from what's been proposed already here? I really wouldn't have. There's no silver bullet. There's no one solution for this problem. There is a lot of little things that we could be doing, and you know, even we're talking about, you know, so many 71% or so many individuals. Each one of them is a different story, and someone said to me once that housing is a game of percentages. There's no one solution that's going to work with everyone. There's a lot of little things that we need to be doing, or that we could be doing, and we probably need to think of new things with every new person we have joining the street population in Ealing.
Thank you, Councillor Martin and Councillor.
I think from what you've said, it's about us all trying to sort of think outside the box here, really. No recourse to public funds. My concern hugely here is that we lose our wonderful stakeholders because they can't get funding themselves. So it really is a question of us trying to think outside the box as to how we can make this system work. I suppose my question is, have you sort of, and I'm assuming you have, tried to sort of think outside the box as to what we can do? Because my concern is that we will start losing these stakeholders, and doing that will just create the problem and make it even worse for us. In relation to Southall, I can't agree more with you. We have a magnetic attraction, and it's the generosity of the amazing people with the Good Warriors and all the religious organisations, which is admirable, really, to be honest. But we do need to start looking outside and thinking outside the box as to how we can make this work, because if we don't, we could end up with a serious problem here, I think.
Although we're talking about Southall being a magnet as a bad thing, we're talking about people with a lot of potential. We're talking about people who could be doing jobs and paying taxes in the UK. So I don't see that Southall being a magnet for people is a bad thing. The bad thing is that the people that Southall is attracting cannot legally do the things that they want to do. But that's not a problem that we are going to resolve here, at least not in Ealing, and not in the short term. The things that the central government could be doing, but I mean, all we can do is talk to them. I have this idea of we've mentioned Redbridge and Slough. We could be maybe getting together with them and maybe talking to central government about things that could be done. It's not something that I could do, but it's something that Ealing Council may consider. Our partners, very, very important. I mean, the jobs Hope for Southall in particular are doing. I wouldn't want to be losing that. That's why, I think, well, you've spoken to them and you have recognized the fact that having 3 hours a week of a one-stop shop is nowhere near, doesn't touch the size of the need we have. I fully support that idea of, and we have the building that we could be used for that purpose. It would have a cost for the council, but I don't know, the council may want to assume that cost, and I'm pretty sure we could also ask NHS colleagues and public health colleagues to help with that cost. We are constantly looking into ideas of how we can support Hope for Southall. We have recently we are making a request within the context of the Borough of Santry to use some of those funds to be given to Hope for Southall, to be used to accommodate people that come out of drug detox treatments and things like that. So even though they may have no recourse to public funds, they don't have to go back to the streets after going through detox or treatments, and they probably return to whatever they were doing before. That hopefully will get that, and we will continue to support any bids for grants that they make to Housing Justice and any other sources of grants. We pass all the information we can to them regarding any grants available. We have a very close relationship with them. We speak often. They are part of our tasking and targeting group as well. So we meet every 6 weeks to discuss cases and to discuss what's happening generally with them. So we value Hope for Southall, and of course all the other partners.
Thank you, Councillor Healy.
Thank you so much, Carlos, for your time. So I've just got a few questions to ask, and I think Ben talked about assessing the rough sleepers and how to meet their needs, and you talked about, them being vulnerable and having mental health issue. But my concern is when we're assessing the rough sleepers, are the assessment quite easy for them, or when they're getting referred, and how are they getting referred? And also, what I wanted to know more about is, so what measures are being taken to ensure that the rough sleepers are aware of the services that are available to them? And one of the reasons why I asked this question is I've seen a lot of sleepers in the ward that I represent, North Acton, and we had a walkabout with the police recently, especially in Springfield Park and North Acton Park, and it seems like they had no idea where they should go, who to turn to. Maybe there was a bit of a miscommunication, I don't know. And also, so that was to thinking, even as a councillor, I would love to know how can I refer them and what steps we need to take to be more clear. And also, interpreters, I know some of them don't speak fluent English. How easy is it for us to access interpreters for those who are in need? Thank you.
Let's start from the beginning. What we ask our commission services to do is to go out and do outreach shifts, and the street legal worker sits with the same team. So the street legal worker is the person who will keep those 9 beds. Yeah. So outreach finds the person. They identify that person has a need for immigration advice. So they pass on that case to that area of support to the street legal worker. Street legal worker then may pass the actual immigration advice to North Kensington Law Centre or Ealing Law Centre, but she also keeps a caseload herself, and we'll have a close relationship with those individuals. We'll talk to those individuals often. We'll be knowledgeable. She will be working together with outreach into identifying needs and outreach and any other services. So she's the person that, having knowledge of those cases, will help us identify who has a case, an immigration case that is significant and can have a positive result, and who is, to her knowledge, the more vulnerable person. She will talk to them, talk to their GPs, talk to whoever she needs to talk to get the necessary information. Getting information to rough sleepers. So rough sleepers normally, anyway, if you want to help a rough sleeper, the first thing you do is refer them to a street link. Street link then passes that information to the rapid response team, which is a Pan London service, and to our outreach team. Both rapid response goes out to see those rough sleepers to see if they can find them, or outreach goes out. They are verified, and when they are verified, they have that conversation. Assessing someone in the street is a very difficult task because of where you are, because they are not going to be able to provide any evidence of anything. So you have a conversation with them, and you take whatever they tell you at face value, basically, in that first instance. and then you advise them appropriately for whatever needs they have told you that they have. Hopefully, most cases are seen one night only, and then they are moved on to either to their help to a secure accommodation, or they secure accommodation by themselves. So that's a big proportion of them. But if that doesn't happen, then outreach continues to support them. We may be able to accommodate them if they are eligible. If they are not, we may be able to refer them to immigration advice services and so on. But basically, that's the way we go and talk to them. We go and talk to them, and we tell them, here's what what you need. You can find here. We can support you to go there. We can call someone. We can make a referral for you. Yeah. Interpreting. The outreach has access to a phone line, interpreting phone line, when they don't have the language skills themselves, which is not always. But yeah, they can use in the street. They have a mobile phone. They'll call the interpreting line, and they'll use that.
It's fine. I'm so sorry. There's an interesting point that you've made, and I just want to be clarified. You said the outreach work will be out and about in the borough. So are they out every single day looking for rough sleepers, or are you out certain times of the day or a week? If you could give me that timetable, that would be really great.
No, the outreach services has a contract that says that they have to go out 3 times a week, and that is either early mornings or late evenings, as what we can afford.
So Ealing is big. We've got different towns. So when do you allocate it? Different towns, or is it?
Not necessarily, no. They act on intelligence. So they go to the Street Link reports. They go to intelligence that they gather from mental health teams, drug and alcohol teams, and based on that intelligence, they'll go out and target the areas where they think they're going to find rough sleepers.
Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Carlos, for detailed briefing. I was going to say, if somehow you knew someone in Redbridge, who might have contacts, I'm sure we can put you in touch with them. I think there was one question I think you kind of answered, which is what Ben asked actually about the numbers, is why Ealing has become so high, because that is really out of sync with our neighbouring boroughs. And I don't know the answer. I'm not asking you on the spot on that one, because whether Crossrail has an effect, because it's had an effect over in Ilford, because it's on that line straight from Stratford, of course, as well. A couple of things. I mean, partly alluding what Councillor Helly said, because we're both from Acton as well, so it's that spread. There's the numbers we know in Southall. There must be some in Acton, but perhaps different demographic. I don't know the answers. I was going to ask about contact methods. So it sounds like some of them have mobile phones as well, because, how do I keep in touch? Because one of the fears is, what happens to them? If they died or something really happened, how do they contact people? I've got more, but carry on with those two.
No, it's sorry, the phones. Yeah. Outreach has a budget for, they call it a personal budget. And they can provide phones, they can provide a number of things to a rough sleeper. So if they don't have one, they'll be given one. What was the other question? Sorry. Townwide. So if you look at the map, it's I don't have a map here, but it's the chain reports produce these maps of where rough sleeping, and telling you where rough sleeping happens. And you can see a red line over the Axbridge Road from Acton to Southall, with big blobs on Acton, Ealing Broadway, Southall. Then there are other smaller red blobs, maybe in the north, but that's the map. That's what the map looks like. It's all along the Axbridge Road, and with a main focus. The main focus, the biggest red blob is Southall, then Ealing Broadway, and then Acton, Why? That's
So maybe it's additional questions because I don't know the answer. But have there been any deaths on the streets? I guess it's rough sleepers generally, but specifically some of these clients.
the answer to that is yes. There are deaths in the streets every year. I have not had any reports of any recently. Last year during SWEP we had one person. This year we're very concerned about one individual because and it's basically what happened last year is that there was a person who was never seen by services. They were hiding so well that he was a vulnerable man, and he would look for very good hiding places so he would not be seen by people that he perceived as threatening. And he had a good friend, and he basically died because it was very cold. And by the time he decided to come out of his hiding place, it was too late. He was found in the street with his friend. The ambulance came. They couldn't save his life. This year, we are very concerned about a female who is out in the streets and is refusing to be hospitalized. It's not even a rough sleeping concern. I think this is more a concern from the point of view of adult social care or even medical services. But she was taken to hospital on more than one occasion. She absconded from hospital. We have offered her accommodation. She left that accommodation. We offered accommodation again last night. She refused again. We know that she probably has sepsis and other health problems. She's really complex health picture. Drug and alcohol, drug problems. She's a Class A user, and she's completely refusing to engage with, not to engage. She is engaging. She's talking to services. She just doesn't want to go to hospital or to any of the accommodation settings that we've offered her, and we worry that she is not going to live the winter.
On the politics of it, obviously, slightly not party politics, but the rule you mentioned, 20-year rule, because previously it was shorter than that, wasn't it? 14, and whether we collectively as councils should be campaigning to reduce that back to 14 at least, if that may help. Do you think go out? Yeah. Oh dear, I'm out. I think then, aren't I?
If we went back to the 14-year rule, we probably would be able to, we'd have cases for a lot more of these guys. Yes, immediately would make a difference.
Thank you. 3 more questions. Councillor Zizamos, and I don't know if that's a legacy hand, Councillor Summers, and I have a question. And yeah, Councillor Zizamos.
Just to say, we went to North Acton Plainfields on my midnight shift, but we couldn't find them. We were wandering around in the dark and couldn't find anybody but tree stumps who they thought were people. But there you go. So they did actually have a call out to go there, but they couldn't find anybody when I went. And when I went there, they did actually give out a mobile phone to someone. So they set it up for him, put the SIM in, checked that it rang, that they had the phone, and they handed it over to him. So hopefully that in North Acton. No.
That was somewhere else.
Somewhere else. During the night, when we actually did find someone, actually the guy that's at the top of my street, he got a mobile phone. I set it up for him, the whole thing, got to work, made sure it rang for them so they all knew the number and, handed it over to them. So it does work. So my question, what happens if you've gone through the immigration thing, you've got no case, are you forever on the streets?
Unless you want to voluntarily go back to your country of origin, that's more or less it, yeah.
So the same Mongos just offer welfare checks then after that?
They'll do welfare checks. We keep a record of who has been seen by the solicitors. And we may go back and try again after a few years. But yeah, that some Mongos will refer them to drug and alcohol services, to mental health services, do welfare checks. but and then you do in the winter provide sweat accommodation if it's too cold. But yeah, there's not much we can do if someone has no recourse to public funds and no case for regularizing their immigration situation.
Thank you. Councillor Summers?
Yeah, thanks for giving me a second bite of the cherry, and I'm sort of going back a bit on what I said previously. So yeah, I would like to take Carlos, I think it is, up on what he said about it not being a bad thing for Southall to be a magnet. I disagree. I think that's a little bit naive to think, you know, it is not a good thing for Southall and Ealing to be attracting large numbers of rough sleepers. I mean, it's naive also to think that they don't come with lots of, you know, large amounts of antisocial behaviour involved, and obviously crime, you know, acquisitive crime. If you're a drug addict, you need to you know, steal and stuff like that. So I don't think, you know, we cannot be saying that it's a good thing. You know, whatever those who are here, obviously we want to help, but we really don't want more. And also on the point that, you know, Councillor Zisimus asked the question I was about to ask, really. You know, these people, especially if you're from India or Poland, that is not a country that the Home Office are ever going to grant you, you know, asylum from. It's not considered a dangerous country. So the best option for a lot of these people is, you know, to go back to their home country. And I would like to think that you are, you know, trying to make that happen rather than sort of living in a sort of cloud cuckoo land where they can stay here for 20 years and then eventually stay here and be rehoused and get a job, because that's really not going to happen. And, you know, it's sort of unrealistic, and I don't think it's terribly helpful.
I agree that sometimes we are making the problem worse for some individuals, in the sense that you know, the problem cannot be resolved, and what Councillor Zisimus was highlighting now, that what happened to you if you don't have any case, you know, what are you going to do? You're going to be subject to a precarious life the rest of your life, or for at least for a long time, for 10, 15, 20 years of your life. So I hate to think that sometimes by supporting people, we are perpetuating their personal situation. Absolutely agree that it's not in their best interest to remain in a situation where they cannot lawfully work, they cannot lawfully rent or buy a home. There's nowhere to go. Do we look at that? I mean, I guess that's then the decision is not for me. Do we not provide any support because we are helping perpetuate that situation, or we take the humane approach and try to help these people whether they want to go back to their countries of origin or not? I'm not naive about the life these people are living as a consequence of their legal situation in this country. It's absolutely horrendous, yes, and yes, they are driven to drugs, mental health problems, alcohol, and in some cases antisocial behavior. Was first the chicken or the egg? That's a bit of the question. A lot of these people did not come here to, I mean, I imagine that no one came here to commit crime. I imagine that people came here to make a living and to have a decent life, not to commit crime.
Thank you, Carlos. I have two questions, and I don't know if you have the information now or you can just send it later. But in terms of the Old Southall Library, it is on. In terms of Old Southall Library, how many can we accommodate there? That is one question. So
we are accommodating at the moment during SWEP, accommodate there. So the plan in the long term is not for us to accommodate people there, but in the short term for SWEP, we have up to 60 individuals there. We had 39 the first night this week, and we had 47 last night. And this night, probably the number will go up again because that's how SWEP works.
What is the maximum capacity?
60.
60 is the max
Yeah.
that we can. Okay.
Because it's an old building.
Yeah, I know that I'm very familiar with the building or library. Now, my other question was the 710 individuals that are known to the services. Do we have a breakdown by ethnicity, gender, age, and also in terms of breakdown of them receiving support from services like alcohol, drugs, mental health support? So is there a breakdown of this?
There is a break. There are, I mean, the 710 was the total number of people that was seen in the streets sleeping rough last year. We have a breakdown by gender. We have a breakdown by nationality. Probably we probably have a breakdown on where they were seen. If we're talking about wards, what particular wards they were seen. We have yearly chain reports, quarterly chain reports, and we have other data we can access on chain. So if you have any particular questions, happy to look them up. Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you. And I think that is Ben, one final question, because I know James has been waiting for a long time.
Just a final point about Carlos's point about the humanity here, and then doing what you can as a council. I think it's really important that whether we call it attractive or not, the government has made choices. They're choices that create a hostile environment for people who are sleeping on the streets, and they're choices that keep people entrenched in that situation. So it is for this council to take to the government those challenges and say, can we change that if we want a long-term solution? The short-term solution, the only one that we could do here, is to protect people and treat people's lives as the most important function of what a council team could do here. So I fully support Carlos in doing that. I think this committee would do well to avoid stigmatizing language. We're not talking about addicts here. We're not talking about criminals. We're talking about people who are sleeping on the streets. There is no data to back that up. And if there is, then they can bring it to this committee and we'll discuss why those people have been pushed into those vulnerable situations where they are causing problems for their neighbours. But that's not necessarily the case at all. So I just wanted to put that on the record because I think that should be the approach of this committee.
Thank you.
Definitely agree with you on that. I think, you know, this report was definitely an eye-opener for all of us, and the services that are available and the work that they do, because a lot of these services are voluntary work really, and the outreach team is vital. It's important to have it, and they do an amazing job. For us, I think it's fair to say as a panel, we all agree that we support the one-stop shop that we're calling, you know, the day centre. So that would be a really good approach for us to have. And I think as a borough, we could possibly look at having more, but fundings are tight, I know. But definitely, I think we all support that. So that would be one of, you know, something that we would agree with your recommendations on that. So thank you very much for your time this evening and preparing the report for us. Thank you. Yeah, so we move on to the next item on agenda, which is the Housing Performance Dashboard, Q2, and we have James Smith, who has joined us online, who will be presenting the performance dashboard for us. It's all yours, James.
Great. Good evening, everybody. First of all, thank you for inviting me along. I think it's really important to share how we're performing in housing with you. What I was hoping to do with this is just run through a few slides, setting the context, introduce the dashboard, and then open to questions, if that's okay, Chair.
Yes, thank you.
Brilliant. So yes, we're on an improvement journey at the moment. I think it's fair to say, both in terms of performance management and service delivery. We've got some kind of big challenges to overcome. It's been a bit of an iterative process. I mean, I'd say that the dashboard's not perfect. I think it's probably very informative, I hope. And I hope it'll prompt a good conversation and give you some decent insight into where we're at within the services. So I'm just going to share my presentation. If can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Brilliant. So I think the action from the last scrutiny meeting was to bring the housing dashboard. I just wanted to kind of illustrate here really that there are kind of a number of housing dashboards. The one in the light blue is the one that I brought along, which is the quarterly dashboard, which we have just started reporting to our housing board, which we've only had one meeting so far, but that's going to be a resident-led meeting about us just being open and transparent with our residents and trying to involve them and get them to participate in kind of holding us accountable and understanding what we're doing. But we actually report in performance information at all sorts of levels, from kind of the service management KPIs and project and program KPIs. We have kind of top priority indicators that we're analysing and making decisions against daily stand-ups and kind of a weekly top 5. So, for example, in the daily stand, we've got a real focus on voids because we've had a process that hasn't quite been working right. So it's something that we've really applied ourselves to, because there's a real urgency to us driving down the numbers of voids, particularly given the challenges we've got with accommodation in the borough. The monthly dashboard is pretty much the same as the dashboard I'm reporting tonight, just it's a month snapshot. And then, of course, there are things like the council plan deliverables and numerics. So just to give an illustration of kind of the breadth of it, really, and that's the internal before we start talking about all the statutory reporting. Just a really quick note, because I guess often KPIs can be seen as quite dull, dry things. So it's kind of it's a bit of a slide about what's the purpose of it all, really. What are we measuring? And I guess in my head, the KPIs, they're there to achieve. There's kind of 4 buckets of things, 4 categories that they're there to measure ourselves against, and a lot of the KPIs are actually measuring more than one. So, but this is, I think, a reasonable way to present them. It's about first and foremost capturing the outcomes that we're achieving for our residents, and it's a really important way of us demonstrating whether we're fulfilling our core purpose or not. So things like homelessness prevention or tenant satisfaction. It's about regulatory requirements. We have the regulator for social housing, as well as kind of local government ombudsman and everything else. There's the housing ombudsman now as well. So the housing has become increasingly strictly regulated, and we are very much more accountable to a wider range of external stakeholders. There's obviously financial efficiency, spending counter taxpayers' money wisely, and then operational management as well. We're operating efficiently and doing things right. Like I say, these aren't mutually exclusive, and actually, if you look at kind of resident outcomes, will obviously operating efficiently, managing well, meeting the regulatory requirements are all going to contribute to that. So it's just a way of illustrating it, really. Before I talk about the dashboard itself, I just wanted to speak about kind of some of the challenges that we've faced and the improvements that we have made and are still making in performance management across housing and environment. First of all, we've had a number of fairly substantial issues with data quality and kind of historic and legacy data. So we've been doing a lot of work cleansing our data and improving our systems and processes, and training staff in those new processes to try and make sure that, as far as possible, the information that we are reporting is accurate, but more importantly, the information that we have to enable us to manage the services is accurate, because if you have bad data, you make bad decisions. We are starting to work towards automating our data. You will probably have guessed from the dashboard that's circulated to you, it's an Excel spreadsheet that's been converted into a PDF. We've already started transferring some of our data onto Power BI and trying to be a bit smarter and kind of come into the 21st century. We want to expand that across a lot more of our data, improve the way that our systems talk to one another, make sure that we can get our data and our KPIs quickly, accurately, and we can analyse them easily. We want to benchmark ourselves more through using our networks, through comparing against published data sets, to make sure that we know what the kind of best in class performance is, and that we're aspiring to that and getting closer. In terms of our commentary and the way we interpret and act upon our KPIs, we want to be action oriented. There's always a temptation, not just here, in every place I worked, I think, where people see a KPI and they want to tell a story about it, or the reason this is bad, or that, and it's a narrative. And actually, where we want to be is saying, this is the situation, this is the action that we're going to take, and this is the impact that we're going to have, and this is how we're going to improve. So it's trying to make sure we're focused in that way. And the final thing on this list, and it's at the bottom of the list, but it's at the bottom of the list for a reason, because I think it's the one that we really need to focus on. So that's why I've left it to last. It's about hearing the voice of our resident. It's something the regulator for social housing is putting at the core of what they're requiring for us. We've got a contract now to conduct tenant satisfaction measures. So every month we have an independent company phone in a representative selection of our residents to understand their experience. We're now building the capability to understand and identify and respond to those insights. And what are our residents telling us? What are we going to do about it? So, for example, if they phone a resident and that resident expresses dissatisfaction about something, we're automatically, and if they may choose to remain anonymous, in which case we're slightly limited in what we can do about it. If they've identified themselves, we will contact them and see if they want to take that through the complaints process, so we can make sure that they get a positive outcome from it and we act on it. If they're anonymous, we still take the information about the problem that they've had and an aggregate look at it and see how can we make our services better. So it's trying to listen to residents and get closer to residents and respond to them better. There's a lot more work that we're doing in terms of improving our resident involvement, our resident engagement, working with things like the Housing Forum. I mentioned the Housing Board earlier. So yeah, we don't want to just rely on KPIs. We want our tenants to understand how we're performing and feedback on our KPIs, and we want that direct kind of qualitative feedback to improve our services. Onto the dashboard specifically, and apologies if that was a slightly long lead in. So the things I thought it was helpful just to set a bit of context, and I won't talk through the dashboard. I'll just open it to questions on the assumptions that you've all looked at it. In terms of what the indicators are telling us, that the first 5 indicators are all about asset management compliance. So it's all about the kind of the regulatory and safety indicators relating to our the properties that we own and manage. We've made significant data quality enhancements since we self-referred ourselves to the regulator. I believe that was about 15 months ago. I'm not sure. I've been in Ealing since April. A lot of the data improvements I've talked about and the dashboards I've created so far have been in this area. When you look at the dashboard I've circulated, you'll see a lot of amber on there. What that as a snapshot doesn't show you, I guess, is the journey that we've been on, the massive kind of improvements that we've made. Indicator number 8, and I'm sorry I'm skipping ahead, but I've done this thematically because that's about temporary accommodation compliance. So it's the same set of things like gas safety and fire safety, electrical safety, all those things for our temporary accommodation. What's become apparent to us is that we had gaps in the records of properties that we lease from private landlords. So our learning in the properties that we own in asset management, we've applied to temporary accommodation, and we're driving we've got a compliance drive there to make sure that we've got accurate records that all of those properties are safe, and what's more, that we've documented and we can demonstrate that they're safe. So that's measuring our progress on that, which we've got some very clear plans, and I think over the next couple of months we should have that in a position that's as good as our own stock. Indicator 6 is about kind of tenant satisfaction. So this is the tenant satisfaction measures that I've spoken about already. I won't go into that any further. We can obviously talk about that if you like when we look at the dashboard. Indicator 7 is talking about the housing demand at commercial hotels. Now we had to start using commercial hotels because of the homelessness crisis, because of the lack of affordable accommodation, landlords exiting the market, and a spike in the numbers of homeless people. There's an imperative for us to move people out of commercial hotels, both because of the financial costs of it, but because of the poor facilities in them. People can't cook, people can't do the laundry and things like that. So that's monitoring our progress against that, which is about us acquiring other more suitable properties to move people out into. Indicator 11 is about temporary accommodation visits, which is just about managing people in temporary accommodation more effectively and visiting property to make sure that people are still in residence, that they've not moved on, and that they're complying with the terms of their accommodation. And if properties are empty, then making sure that they're relet, so we're recycling the stock and again, avoiding using expensive and unsuitable accommodation. Indicators 9 and 10 are about voids and arrears. It's about turning around our void stock much more quickly than we have historically, addressing and resolving that problem. And arrears about more effectively managing, reducing the levels of our arrears, both for financial reasons for the council, but because really I think we do our tenants a disservice when we let them build up large amounts of debt that is not sustainable for them or for us. If we can support people early, identify when there's a small debt, reach out, offer support, then you're in a situation that you can resolve. Whereas, yeah, historically that's not always been the case, and you get into a more difficult position. So that's everything in terms of my introduction slides. So I
Sorry, we lost you? Oh. James, I think you're frozen. We can't actually.
It's finished and you've got.
Perfect timing. Yes. Try to reconnect, maybe. Oh,
apologies. I don't know what happened.
You're still, the screen's frozen, but we can hear you. Oh yeah, we can hear you, definitely.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
So we move on to questions. You don't have any questions? Councillor Taylor? Ben, you start, yes.
Right. Yeah, can you hear me, James?
Yes, I can, yes.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thanks so much for the report. Really helpful to see. Just wondering that there's a few areas. I've got a couple of questions. Is that all right? Yeah. There's a few areas where there doesn't seem to be any like headline data. So when you're looking at arrears, voids, temporary accommodation visits in the dashboard, I was just wondering if you're working to make sure that next time there's a kind of full set of numbers.
Oh, sorry, that was yeah. So that was that was about that's about the targets. There's yeah, there aren't specific targets against those.
Okay.
Yes, I mean it is something that we should reflect on the front sheet. But yeah, I've only used that column where we've got a specific target. Okay,
great, thank you. I think it's worth including the numbers even without a target if that's possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. And then just to move to the bit that scares me the most,
yes.
if that's helpful. So number 5 is damp and mould.
Yes.
You talk about. So just for other councillors' awareness, if you're not aware, that's a category 1 hazard. That means the most dangerous type of hazard, and it basically means the occupier may require medical attention if exposed to it over the course of a year. So August isn't, from my experience, the kind of high time for damp and mould. It usually creeps in winter time when you've got that condensation and everything happening in the home. So to have 113 days to survey for it as the reality compared to your 15-day target is like a serious risk, is it not?
We've got a significant issue there to solve. If I may share my screen. Well, actually, let me explain, because I'm just loads of. So yes, there's a serious issue because we have some historic cases that have been open a significant amount of time that we need to resolve. And that's in part down to the capacity of our contractor that we're working with our contractor on. It's down to our staff capacity, which again we are recruiting into. In terms of our new reports of damp and mould coming through, and that's the report that I'm just looking for at the moment. Our average days for for September was 7.3 days to respond. So that's for the new reports. So I'm in no way justifying the number that's on that front sheet, because that needs addressing, and that needs addressing urgently. We've got a plan in place to address that. But in terms of the new reports coming in, we are managing them in a very short time frame. So
appreciate, James, that you're talking about the new reports for September rather than August, but presumably there were some new reports in August, which actually worries me even more, because you're finding then that there's probably people close to a year that have been waiting if you're taking 113 days as the average. So some will have been cleared up in a week, some in maybe double that time.
Yes, no, there are. I mean, there are some historic jobs which have which need to be addressed as a priority, and we put plans in place with the contractor to address those.
That's useful to know about the actions. Can I make a recommendation to the committee that we actually see a report on that maybe at the next committee, or even sooner if possible? It would be good to see those September numbers, because there will be people at genuine risk in each of the council's constituencies at the moment. Thanks, James.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ben, for the question. About the legacy reports that we have on damper mold, do you actually have a number on hand so that we know what is the legacy that we're looking at?
I mean, I have a profile, so I mean, it's broken down into kind of 30-day increments. So that the overall work in progress is about, well, it currently is about 320 jobs.
And that's on damper mold only, yeah?
Yes, that's on damper mold.
Councillor Taylor?
Thanks, Chair. James, I know you weren't at the last meeting, so we're not going to replicate what the comments came back from last meeting. And I think, in fairness, the cabinet member did recognise some of the difficulties, should we say, in wanting to improve things. I just want to pick up on I guess the poor data, because that really worries me. Because in terms of, was there information there? It just wasn't recorded properly, or we just in terms of the data, not you presenting, what you were saying in terms of slides disappeared now, but and how records were kept previously. I suppose the other thing for me is there's always a context to this. You know, we're obviously seeing live figures, but if I look at what's the trend lines, you know, how it almost built up, and now we're obviously trying to improve things going forward. There's a cause and effect sort of thing. What's happened there? And there was one slight emergency. The number of emergencies has dropped, completed on time, in end of quarter two. Sorry, James. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. So there's a first point about the poor data. Yes. Was that in reference to my comment in the presentation?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So like I said, I've what we've had is on our housing IT system. We've had some problems with duplicate records and with incorrect permissions for different users. So we've identified incorrect information on there, which is being cleansed and resolved. So that's kind of the heart of the poor data issue. I think that has been driven by the issues that were identified in asset management compliance and needing to get a very accurate picture there. So that work is not completed, but I think there's been a step change, and that has focused and started with asset management with compliance because of the level of risk there. It's about having obviously having an accurate picture and then driving compliance to 100%. There are still other areas of our data which we need to work through and improve and finish cleansing, which and that's been managed on kind of a risk basis, which is why compliance was front loaded. And apologies, the other part of your question.
That's okay, James. I suppose the second part was me and a professional trying to look at context and historical trends, but let's not worry about that at the moment. But there was the question about the emergency repairs drop performance on one of the pages, or
yes. So that's
on page 24.
Page 24, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, so so it's dropped to it's down at 76.3, and
I mean, it's
So
a
the
bit
que-
like Ben's point, which is he's looking at obviously something quite serious. Cat 1 has for us, emergencies is literally an emergency, which might not, whatever the time frame is, but it implies something serious needs to be resolved, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I think if in the commentary on the dashboard, I think that one was is addressed, and the September figure had gone back up to 98%. That there was an issue with the previous months that's been addressed, and so yeah, that's up to 98, and obviously we'll be seeking that to be sustained and improved in October.
Thank you, James. Councillor Martin.
Thanks, James. Look, I appreciate that this is a real challenge for you, but when do you think we will have the accurate data and the system all up and running?
Sorry, which accurate data?
Well, just so that we're actually up to speed here, because if I said to you, are we all on one system now? Are we still porting some information across? When are we just, going to have everything so clear?
No, we're on multiple systems still, and it's it's likely. I mean, at the moment, the proposal is probably another 18 months. This data, though, just let me emphasise, I hope I've not been unclear. This data on the dashboard, we have a good degree of confidence in. So so all of the asset management, this is data that's been validated and verified, and that we're monitoring on an ongoing basis. So we have some data issues within our housing system. We have multiple systems. We have unnecessary complexity, and we have data to cleanse. This data that I'm presenting to you is data that has been cleansed and has been verified and has been checked.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions from the panel? Councillor Tag?
Chair, excellent. And thanks very much, James. I'm just looking here. You mentioned about indicator 8 about temporary accommodation compliance, and that there's a gap in the records at the moment. And I was specifically of the properties released from private landlords. I just wondered a little bit on the gap and how it had come about. Is that because the standards have sort of improved recently and what we expect? And just to kind of get a picture of where the gaps might have come from, and like presumably because I guess we get casework and people coming in, and so many people, and we're trying to refer them into temporary accommodation at times when they're in very difficult circumstances, and just to kind of understand when we do kind of take on, I suppose, new properties, what those checks are and where the gaps have come about. Thanks.
And I can't give you the categorical explanation. What I think has happened is about the demand and the numbers of people coming into temporary accommodation. The thing that's facilitated it happening is having an out of date paper-based system where we've got files and we've got copies of things. What we're doing to address it is getting rid of that paper-based system and move into, I think I mentioned it in the presentation, move into an online system called True Compliance, which is what we've put in place with all of our property stock. So we get the certificates off the landlord, they're updated, and then you've got an automatic record and track, and I believe there's also kind of triggers on the system. So when a particular certificate is becoming due, you understand that it's becoming due. So with a system like that in place, whether we've got 500 or 5,000 people in temporary accommodation, you've got a proper system that can audit and manage that information. And I know it's not part of your question, but it might also be worth me just talking about kind of the kind of actions that we're taking to drive those numbers up to 100%.
Great, yeah, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, so I mean the starting point has been getting in touch with all of our temporary accommodation landlords. And I think we've written or spoken with all of them 3 times now, and that's what's driven it up to levels so far. The last letter has been a notification that if the checks are not carried out, then we will carry them out, and it'll be at their expense, that we will recharge that or deduct that from the rent. So we've gone through an expedited process to kind of give them reasonable warning to work with them, but we will carry out those works, and that's how we can have the assurance that we're going to resolve the situation in a short space of time.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, it's a bit of a follow-up to that one, James, because obviously we have a number of TA providers out of borough, don't we, as well?
Yes.
So do we, I mean, they don't threaten us and say, well, we'll just take our business, I don't know, to Hackney or Haringey or Hounslow or somewhere, if we want these checks done.
It's a risk.
It's just a clarification point. That's what I'm after.
Well, yeah, it's absolutely a risk, but I mean, yeah, it's unlikely that another council is going to take them on without getting the checks done, because they're kind of they're a requirement. So, and I guess from our perspective, whilst it would be a headache trying to source alternative accommodation in a really competitive market, we have to do it.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, we go to our recommendations, I guess. Yeah. From the report, I guess it's good that we are acknowledging that there are issues, and we know what needs to be done, and I guess the housing team's going in the right direction to address these issues. 18 months is a long time. But like I said, we're taking the right steps to get this sorted. The damp and mold was one of the things that really stood out for myself and other panel members, as Ben mentioned. And I think we all agree that we do want to see an update on the August and September report on the damp and mold report that you have. So if that can be, that is our recommendation. If we can get that sent to us, that would be great. Agreed?
Yeah.
Ben, yes.
Can I just add on that? I think it's so worrying, those numbers, that I think it's worth seeing the September report as soon as possible, rather than waiting until the next committee meeting. And if that doesn't show a significant improvement, then it's worth us writing to the cabinet member as a committee just to ask for more reassurance. Than we've only got a small bit of narrative at the moment and a couple of actions from the report, but I think we need to ask for a more comprehensive action plan to be reassured that this has been dealt with.
Absolutely, yes. This is basically our last meeting on housing, and the next one is going to be on the environment side. So if we could get that as soon as possible, and I think it is worth raising it with the cabinet member. So I will be writing to Councillor Brett on this as well. So thank you. Thank you, James, for your time tonight. And yeah, it was very helpful to know the reports. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Good night.
We move on to, okay, it's just, yeah. We move on to the next, which is a panel work program. The next meeting that we have is going to be in April, and we will be looking at, if I can get it up, the Circular Economy Hub and ultra low waste zone / recycling. There will be a site visit. Now, I hope panel members will be able to make it, but Anna Marie will send the details whenever we arrange that.
Yeah, we're just going to make sure the site.
Hopefully, hopefully it's April next year. The date of our next meeting is the 3rd of April next year.
Sorry, now I'm coming in too much. The next meeting, I wondered if there's any space on that agenda, because I think it's just the one item that you've got, but I appreciate it's got a few different bits in there. And you might be sick of housing as well, but far be it from me to not mention housing again. I wonder if the panel would be interested in looking at energy performance certificates and energy efficiency as relates to the environment, and looking at your social housing stock and retrofits, but also if there's any evidence around private renters as well and how energy efficient our homes are in the borough. I'd personally be very interested to see that, but it depends if we can find a good speaker for it.
We can have a look and see if we can fit that in. That'll be fine, yeah.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question? How would we know about the private sectors if they're up to speed with their?
Every energy performance certificate is available for members of the public to view. You literally just Google energy performance certificate and then put in your address, and you can see what the rating is for each property. And it will also flag those that are out of date, which is often an error that landlords tend to forget to do.
Thank you. And that is the end of our meeting tonight. Thank you very much for your time, and I see you next year. Have a lovely Christmas and New Year.